I'm only telling this because I've stopped being able to walk down long corridors, any of them, in any building, and people keep asking why, and the real answer takes about 20 minutes, and they never want 20 minutes. So here it is once, properly, and then I'd like to not say it again. I cleaned nights at a hospital. Not a nurse, nothing like that. I had a cart and a floor buffer and a list of corridors, and I did the East Wing, second floor, 11 till 7. I want you to understand I had no reason to care about any patient up there. I didn't know them. That's going to matter later, the not caring, because it makes what happened harder to explain away, even for me. The East Wing was the quiet end. Long-stay patients, the ones who weren't going home. And at the very end of the main corridor, there was a single room, 214, with an old woman in it I only knew as the lady in 214. No visitors. 2 years she'd been there, one of the night nurses told me once. 2 years, and not a single visitor. Can you imagine? I said something like, "That's sad," and I kept buffing the floor because it wasn't my business, and I was tired. The corridor to 214 was... I'm going to give you the number because the number is the whole thing. It was about 40 seconds at a walk. I knew that without ever having thought about it, the way you know how long your own hallway at home is. Cart at the lift, push to the end, room 214, the dead-end wall behind it, with the fire door that didn't open onto anything but a sealed stairwell. 40 seconds. I'd done it hundreds of times. The first night it was different. I didn't even clock it as different. I just thought I was slow. I was tired. I'd had a bad week. I pushed the cart down and it felt like a long push, and I got to 214 and thought, God, I'm dragging tonight. That's all. You don't think the building's wrong. You think you're tired. The second night I counted, but only by accident. I'd started counting steps as a thing to do with my head, because nights make your brain loud. And I counted to the end, and it was more steps than it should have been. I knew my own corridor and steps the way you know your own stairs. It was long. Not impossibly. Just more. I stood outside 214 a bit unsettled, and I told myself I'd taken shorter strides. People take shorter strides when they're tired. I had an answer for everything back then. I want you to notice how many answers I had, because I was using them like handrails. Third night, the lady in 214 spoke to me. Her door was usually shut. That night it was open a crack, and as I came past with the cart, she said a name. Not my name. She said, "Daniel? Is that you, Daniel? You came." And her voice did this thing that went straight through me, this relief, this whole life of waiting in 2 words. You came. I'm not Daniel. I stood in her doorway and she was looking at me in the dark, this tiny old woman, and her face was lit up like Christmas. And I didn't have the heart, so I just said, "It's only the cleaner, love. Go back to sleep." And the light went out of her face. Slow, like a thing being switched off room by room. And she turned to the wall. I tell you that because it's the night I should have understood, and I didn't. Because the walk back from her room that night was the longest yet. I counted it, twice the steps of the way in. I stood at the lift breathing and I thought, all right, something is happening. And then I did the thing people do, which is, I decided to test it scientifically so I could prove to myself it wasn't real. I paced it the next afternoon in daylight before my shift, when the wing was full of people and trolleys and light. 40 seconds. 40 exactly. Normal corridor. I almost cried with relief in the middle of it. This grown man pacing a hospital hall, so relieved it was normal. It was only longer at night. And this is the part it took me weeks to see, the part I still can't fully sit with. It wasn't longer by the same amount every night. Some nights it was barely off. Some nights it was twice. And I started keeping it in my phone, the count, because I'm the kind of person who reaches for numbers when I'm scared. Numbers feel like control. And after a couple of weeks, I looked at the list of numbers, and I went cold. Because the pattern wasn't about the building at all. It was about me. I have to back up and tell you the other thing, the thing I'd been keeping in a separate box in my head from the hospital, which is mad, because it was the same hospital. My grandmother was dying on the 4th floor, West Wing, the one who raised me, more or less. My mum was young and not well, and Gran did the actual raising, the school runs and the dinners and the sitting up when I was sick. She'd been admitted about a month before all this, and she wasn't coming out and everyone knew it. And her room was a 4-minute walk and a lift ride from where I pushed my cart every single night, and I had not gone up. Not once. I'd start my shift and think, I'll go up on my break, and then my break would come, and I'd find a reason. The lift was busy. I didn't want to wake her. I'd go tomorrow. I had a handrail for every single night. I couldn't go up there and watch her not know me. That was the truth under all the handrails. The last time I'd seen her clearly herself, she'd held my face and called me her good boy. And I could not go up 4 floors and have her look at me the way the lady in 214 looked at me before she knew I wasn't Daniel, that open, waiting face, and then watch it go out when she didn't recognize me. I'd rather remember her holding my face. So I cleaned. I cleaned the East Wing very, very thoroughly, every night, 4 floors down from the only room that mattered. And here's the list on my phone. The nights I'd told myself, tomorrow, about Gran, those were the nights the corridor to 214 doubled. The one night I actually got in the lift and rode up to 4 and stood outside her door with my hand up and then lost my nerve and came back down. That night, the East Corridor was almost its normal length. Like it knew I'd nearly done it. Like it was measuring how far I was from her by how far it made me walk from a cart to an old woman's door. I know how that sounds. I know. I'm not asking you to believe the building was reading me.
I'm telling you what the numbers said, and I'm telling you I checked them more than once. The corridor kept growing. By the 4th week, the walk to 214 was taking minutes, real minutes, same pace, and the corridor had started to look wrong on the way down. The doors I knew, 208, 210, they sat where they should at first, and then somehow there'd be more wall between them than there was room on that floor for, and the numbers on the doors started repeating. I'd pass a 210 and then another 210, and the exit sign at the far end, the green man running, there got to be 2 of them, then 3, hanging in a dark that the corridor lights weren't reaching the end of anymore. And all the way down I had this feeling, and this is the only part that wasn't a number, so take it for what it's worth. I had the feeling of being waited for. Not chased, nothing behind me, something at the end, past 214, in that dark where the sealed stairwell was, holding still, watching me try to come. The way you watch someone struggling toward you and you don't help because they have to do it themselves. The lady in 214 stopped saying Daniel. The last few nights her door was open and she didn't say anything. She just watched me come the whole long way down, and her face wasn't lit up anymore, and it wasn't switched off either. It was patient. It was the most patient face I've ever seen.
And one night, the second to last night, as I finally reached her door after a walk that had taken me something like 4 minutes, she said, very clearly, not confused at all this time. "It gets longer the more you don't go." And I said, "Go where, love?" Even though I knew. And she just looked at me, patient, and turned to the wall. I didn't sleep that day. I lay there, and I did the maths I'd been refusing to do, which is that the corridor was growing, and the growth wasn't slowing down, it was getting faster. And that meant there was a night coming. Soon, you could see it in the numbers. When the walk to the end would simply not finish. When the corridor would be longer than I could cross in a shift, in a night, in anything. And I understood, finally, lying there, that it had never really been about 214. The lady in 214 was just the one the building used to show me, the visitable woman at the end of a hallway, the warning version of the thing I was actually doing 4 floors up. 2 years, no visitors. Can you imagine? I'd said that was sad and kept buffing the floor. So the last night I went up first. Before my cart, before anything. I got in the lift and I rode to 4 and I walked to my grandmother's room. And that corridor, I want you to hear this, that corridor was normal. Short. 4 floors above the one that had been swallowing me. The walk to Grand's actual door was nothing. 20 steps, because I was finally walking toward it instead of away.
And I went in, and she was small in the bed, and her eyes opened, and she looked at me with that open, waiting face. And I made myself stand in it. I made myself not flinch, and I waited to be a stranger to her. And she said, "There's my good boy." She knew me. Right at the end, on the last night, she knew me. And I'd nearly thrown that away to protect a memory. And I sat with her, and held the face that had held mine, and I said the goodbye I'd been making the building grow with every night I swallowed it. She died that morning, while I was there, holding her hand. I got there in time by about 6 hours, and I only got there because a hospital hallway 4 floors down had spent a month trying to push me toward the one I was running from. I never finished my shift that night. I never went back to the job. And I've never been down the East Wing again. But a nurse I stayed friendly with told me something a while after. And it's the reason I can't walk long corridors now. It's the thing I can't put down. She told me the lady in 214 had died too. The same night as my gran. Within the hour, they thought. And I said, "That's sad. No visitors. 2 years." And the nurse said the strangest thing. She said, "No, that's the thing. Room 214 had been empty for months. They'd closed it. Nobody had been in 214 since the winter. There was no lady in 214. There hadn't been the whole time I was cleaning that wing. So I don't know who I said goodnight to all those nights. I don't know whose face lit up when she thought I was Daniel, or who told me it gets longer the more you don't go. I only know she was right, and that she was waiting at the end of a hallway that grew because I wouldn't walk a different one, and that somebody who'd had no visitors for 2 years spent her last weeks pointing a tired man toward his grandmother's bed. And here's what I can't stop turning over, the thing that put me off corridors for good. If 214 was empty, if there was no patient there to reach, then the walk down that hall was never going to end at a person at all. It was just going to keep getting longer. There was nothing at the end of it. I'd been counting down the nights toward a room with no one in it, in the dark past the sealed stairwell, where something patient was waiting for me to finally finish the walk. I think about how close I came to finishing it. I think about it every time I see a long hallway and the far end goes a little dim. And I turn around every time, and I go the other way, toward whoever's actually still there to be reached. Because I learned the rule the hard way.
on the second to last night, from a woman who wasn't there. It gets longer the more you don't go. So I go. I always go now, while there's still someone at the end.